We are back on Inside Politics, talking foreign affairs today with Vanderbilt professor Dr. Thomas Schwartz. Dr. Schwartz, one of the big pushes by the Trump administration has been to try to do something to solve the Middle East, particularly between the Israelis and the Palestinians. This has been something American presidents have been working on for well over 50 years. Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, has been put in charge of that effort, but he's got his problems in the Russian investigation. He's got other things that he can't seem to get security clearances that you need to be able to be an effective negotiator. So what does the Trump administration do? Do they continue to push with Jared Kushner, or do they change leadership in that?
I think it's a lot of this will depend on whether Jared Kushner can clear up his own issues, which have to do with the Russian probe, to get clearance, to get the security clearance that enables him then to go to the Middle East. He is facing, I think, a lot of issues. There have been questions raised about his relative knowledge of the situation. There was a story this week that the Saudis claim that they've got him in their pocket. This type of thing is going to make it very hard. Now, I think there are possibilities, and to a certain extent, of proposing something to the Israelis and the Palestinians, but our relationship with the Palestinians has deteriorated dramatically since the announcement that we would recognize Jerusalem as the capital, and then Prime Minister Netanyahu has his own political troubles at home. So the conditions are not necessarily ripe for another initiative, even if Jared Kushner can clear it.
We've had you back several times to talk about the Syrian civil war over the last 6 or 7 years. Is that civil war now over and the Assad regime won it?
Yes, I think the Assad regime has essentially won the civil war. This last set of bombardments, which were brutal and carried out even with chemical weapons and other methods, seem to have done the trick. They've consolidated control in the eastern part of the country around Damascus. They will still face, I think, some problems. There'll be some cleaning up operations. They don't have control over the entire country, particularly the area that the Kurds are in the northwest. We still have forces in Syria. We still have forces there. There is this problem now with the Turks. So Assad has won, but it is not an overwhelming. It'll take time still to put Syria back together.
Perhaps a real story there is the intervention of the Russians, because they played a critical role in helping Assad put together what he needed to win that war.
They did. And on the other hand, Putin doesn't want to find himself sort of with an endless commitment, so he wants the situation to be resolved. But it has been effective for him. It has put the Russians back into the Middle East. Even the Saudis are negotiating with the Russians now. The Russians are now seen as a much more viable Middle Eastern partner than they once were, and all of the countries there, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the rest, are also going to Moscow to talk.
But war will continue in that area because the part of Syria that the Assad regime does not control, you're now having the Kurds and the Turks having a fight, and that animosity goes back centuries.
Well, it is the Kurds want an independent group, the group that they want an independent nation. The Syrian Kurds have been identified or have been seen by the Turks as supporting terrorists within Turkey. Turkey intervened. They went into Afrin. They bombed. They occupied part of it. Whether that continues, I think the United States can play a constructive role in trying to mediate that, since we do have contacts on both sides. But it will be interesting to see if we do.
The Kurds' problem is all the people in that area looking for their own homeland, they didn't do very well in the Treaty of Versailles after World War I or in World War II in creating almost all the boundaries, at least the earlier boundaries for all those states over there. That's still a legacy from that history. That is
a legacy from the Ottoman history. They actually received, the notion was that they would have a homeland as a result of the treaties, particularly the Treaty of Sèvres, but that never came about.
When the history of all this is written, the carnage is what's occurred over there, particularly in the Syrian area and going in the surrounding areas over into Iraq and Iran, and the dislocations of all the people that have been caused, particularly by the Syrian civil war. Has that been an underreported problem that's not only impacting that area, but across the world? Because it has had an impact on even this country in terms of refugee relocations.
I don't think we've fully appreciated the degree to which the Middle East has impacted our politics, has impacted our society, and so I do think this will be one of the historical legacies, going back, of course, to 9/11, the Iraq invasion, all of these sorts of things.
You think the invasion of Iraq played a major role in helping to destabilize that particular area, even if it was in response to 9/11?
Yeah, it certainly played a role, and then you have a continuing series of events, the Arab Spring, all sorts of other things. I think detecting, identifying, and seeing all of this will someday be a historical challenge.
To go back to the beginning of our conversation, all the change at the top of the foreign policy team, do you believe this now gives the president a chance to finally bring some coherence, some consistency to what his foreign policy efforts are going to be, or is this going to continue to sort of be a revolving door in White House on foreign affairs?
I think it's unlikely to be a coherent and consistent policy. I think it's likely to be dramatic gestures. Whether they add up into any sort of coherent world vision, I doubt. I think what the president plays in foreign policy is he's looking at foreign policy in terms of its domestic gains and what it does for him domestically. And
it appears also he does it to a large degree as the Lone Ranger. I mean, there's several things he's taken in terms of tariffs and other things he has basically done, and even his staff was sort of amazed at what happened. They were either not prepared for it, or they didn't expect it to happen when it did, nor did they have any idea what he was going to do. That sounds a little bit on the dangerous side, especially when you're dealing with world peace matters.
It sounds dangerous. It is, though, the style that President Trump, it's the style that got him elected. It's the style that appeals to his base. If it ends up in a disaster, that would be terrible it would obviously undermine him, but if it ends up, for example, in denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula, that's a great success. We don't know.
Dr. Thomas Schwartz, the Chinese say we live in interesting times. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Inside Politics this week. Hope you can be back here again for a future show. If you can't get enough politics in the meantime, go to the NewsChannel 5 website. You'll find my Capitol View commentary there. There's a new commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you back here next time. Goodbye.